Unit 6, Day 2 notes, Algebra 2. Okay, we're going to take some things that you did in Algebra 1, mainly the distributive property, and we're going to just take it up a notch. Okay, so let's look at our first topic here. It says multiplying a univariate polynomial by a monomial with a positive coefficient. Okay, so what they're asking us to do, they're asking us to multiply this monomial, meaning one term, by this binomial. Binomial means two terms. Now, any algebraic expression, such as 6c cubed minus 7, for example, that is a polynomial. Polynomial just means multiple terms. Okay, so it could be a monomial, it could be a binomial, a trinomial. Okay, it can have 100 terms if it wants to. Okay, but let's briefly go back to something that I hope you remember easily in Algebra 1 and see what you're going to need to remember in order to do today's topic. Okay, I have a couple of questions here that are Algebra 1 questions. Okay, so this first one here says, I want you to multiply 5 times x minus 3. Now, x minus 3 is two terms. It's actually a binomial. It's a type of polynomial. And the only way that you can multiply 5 by x minus 3 is to distribute. We're going to multiply the 5 by the x, so we would get 5x. And then you're going to multiply 5 by the minus 3, and 5 times minus 3 is minus 15. That's it for that one. You're done on that one. For the second question, we would take negative 3, multiply it by g, and you get negative 3g. And then you would take your negative 3 and you multiply it by the plus 1. So negative 3 times plus 1 is minus 3. And those are your answers. That's Algebra 1. Okay? You're going to do the same thing. You're just going to do it more than this. Okay? We're going to do it more than just 2 times. Okay? And if we only do it twice, we're just going to do it with maybe a term that doesn't just have a number. Maybe it's got a variable with it. Okay, so let's look at the actual notes for today. Okay, so first example, it looks a lot like what we just did from Algebra 1. We have one term on the outside of the parentheses, and we have 2 terms on the inside of the parentheses. We're just going to distribute. So I'm going to take my outside term, 10c to the 4th, and I'm going to multiply it by 6c cubed, or 6c to the 3rd. Okay? So in order to do that, we have to multiply the 10 times the 6. Okay, you multiply the coefficient by the coefficient. So 10 times 6 is 60. And then c to the 4th times c cubed. Now in our last notes, we actually did something like that. C to the 4th times c to the 3rd. If we multiply the same bases, we will add the exponents. So c to the 4th times c to the 3rd is c to the 7th power. Okay. The second half of what we need to do, we're going to multiply 10c to the 4th by the minus 7. Okay, so 10 times minus 7 is minus 70. And now we have c to the 4th. It doesn't have anything to multiply it by, so it just comes along for the ride. So 10c to the 4th times minus 7 is negative 70 c to the 4th. So the only thing that you can ask yourself is, can we subtract or combine these 2 terms into one term? And the answer is no, because we looked last lesson at combining like terms. And we said that in order to add or subtract 2 terms, you have to have the same variable, which these do. They both have c, But those variables have to have the same exponents. These don't. So this is as far as you get. It's kind of like when we had x plus 5 as a final answer somewhere. And you said, well, can I take the 5 and the x and smush them together? No, you can't, because they're not like terms. So if you can remember that, we're going to be in pretty good shape. Let's do the second question. Right? If you feel good about this second question, you want to try it, pause this right now, okay? And then after you've done it, see if you get what I get. Okay, so take a second and pause it if you can. All right, I'm going to go ahead and do this one. So we have two terms in the parentheses, and we want to multiply each of those terms by the term outside the parentheses. Okay, so we're going to take 5b to the 7th, and we're first going to multiply it by 4b. All right, so how do we do that? We take 5, multiply it by 4. So coefficient, which is the number in front of the letter, times the other coefficient. So 5 times 4 is 20. Now, b to the 7th times b. I'm just going to write this off to the side here just to highlight it a bit. Remember that we said if they have this, if the terms have the same base, and when you multiply them, you're going to add their exponents. Well, this exponent is 7. The other one doesn't have one written. So remember, in visible math, if there's no exponent written, we understand that it is 1. Okay? Just like if there's no coefficient, we understand the coefficient is 1. Okay? So b to the 7th times b to the 1st is b to the power of 8, because 7 plus 1 gives you 8. All right. We have another term that we need to multiply the 5b to the 7th by. So 5b to the 7th times 3b squared, or 3b to the 2nd power. We take the 5, multiply it by the 3. So 5 times 3, and it's a plus 3, and it's a positive 5. So we're going to say positive 5 times plus 3 is positive or plus 15. And now it's b to the 7th times b squared. Same base. So we add the exponents. Okay? When the terms are multiplied and they're the same bases in the terms, we just add 7 and 2. So this is b to the 9th power. Okay? And then just like before, we asked ourselves, can you add these two terms? Well, only if they were like terms, but they don't have the same variable with the same exponent. One has b to the 8th, one has b to the 9th. So this means this answer is simplest form. We cannot simplify it any further. That is your first topic. Our second topic is more of the same. Okay? It's just that now there are 3 terms in here, and the number out front, or the term out front that you are multiplying by, is negative. So it's basically the same topic, just a little more complicated numbers, or maybe the numbers aren't quite as easy. Okay? But we can do this. This is not a problem. Let's take negative 8v to the 5th and multiply it by each term. Now, how many terms are there here? Okay? This is kind of important. Every term is separated by either a plus or a minus. So like if I had something like this off to the side, 5a, b, x to the 3rd, y to the 5th, g to the 7th, that's one term. There is no plus, there is no minus. That is one term. So if I'm looking inside the parentheses over here, I see a minus, I see a plus. Okay, so I've got 1 term, 2 term, 3 term. I got 3 different terms. So I've got to multiply that negative 8v to the 5th by all 3 terms. So here we go. We're going to multiply it. I'm going to try to keep it color-coded to help you follow along if you're really making sure on your notes that you're you're getting this concept. Okay, I want to make sure that you can follow. Okay, so I'm going to go orange for negative 8v to the 5th times 2v cubed. So how do we multiply them? Negative 8 times 2. Negative 8 times 2 is negative 16. V to the 5th times v to the 2nd, or v squared. We have v to the 5, or I'm sorry, to the 3rd, or cubed. 5 plus 3 gives me a power of 8. So I've got negative 16 v to the 8th power for my first term. I'm going to change my color so it's easier for you to follow. Okay, so now we're going to take the negative 8v to the 5th and multiply it by minus 7v squared. Well, negative 8 times minus 7, that's like negative 8 times negative 7. Negative times negative is positive or plus. 8 times 7 is 56. V to the 5th times v to the 2nd. 5 plus 2 gives me v to the 7th power. And then finally, for the third color, let's go with blue. So negative 8v to the 5th is now going to be multiplied by plus 9v. So negative 8 times plus 9. Negative times plus is a minus. 8 times 9, 72. V to the 5th, I'll write it up here, times v. Remember, it's invisible math. They don't write the exponent, it's a 1. It's there. So v to the 5th times v to the 1st is v to the 5 plus 1, or 6th power. Okay. So that is our second topic. Again, all we're doing is a distributive property. We're just making sure that we take what we did last time with multiplying like bases and adding their exponents. Okay, so let's go to our next topic down here at the bottom of the page. Now, it's pretty similar, okay? We have a negative number out front again. We have 3 terms inside, so we're going to multiply it by 3 different terms. The only difference here is now they're just throwing in more than one variable. Okay? That's why they say multivariate. Multi-variables, more than one variable. So you've got x's and y's in this one. So if you multiply x's, we can do that. We multiply y's, we can do that. The nice thing is x times y is just xy. So we don't even have to worry about adding exponents there. Okay, so let's look at this one. Again, we'll color code it as much as we can. Let's go orange for the first pair. So let's do negative 7x to the 4th y. And remember, this is y to the 1st power. Okay, invisible math. Times 3x to the 3rd, or 3x cubed. So let's do that. Negative 7 times 3 is negative 21. X to the 4th times x to the 3rd is x to the 7th, because we add the exponents when we multiply the bases. Now we've got y to the 1st multiplied by that term, but there's no y's to multiply it by. So we're not going to change that term. It stays y to the 1st. If you wrote a 1 there, I won't call it incorrect. You just don't have to write it. It's like if your final answer is x equals 2, you don't have to write 1x equals 2, right? All right, so let's go with gray for the middle term. So negative 7x to the 4th y times minus 6x to the 6th y to the 5th. Okay, so let's take the coefficient times the coefficient. Negative 7 times minus 6. Negative times minus is plus, because the negative will change that symbol, whether it's minus to plus or plus to minus. 7 times 6 is 42. x to the 4th, is there an x to multiply it by? Yep, there's an x to the 6th right there. So x to the 4th times x to the 6th gives me x to the 4 plus 6 power, and 4 plus 6 is 10. All right, and there's a y to the 1st. Does the y to the 1st have anything to be multiplied by this time? Yeah, it does. This time it's got y to the 5th. So y to the 1st times y to the 5th gives you y to the 6th. Okay, let's finish it with, let's go blue. Okay, so negative 7 x to the 4th y to the 1st times plus 4 y to the 5th. Okay, negative 7 times plus 4. Negative times plus will make it a minus. Negative will change whatever that sign is. So negative times plus is minus. 7 times 4 is 28. X to the 4th. So does x to the 4th have any x in this term to be multiplied by? No. So it just comes straight along all by itself, x to the 4th. Does the y to the 1st have anything to be multiplied by? Yes, it does. Y to the 1st times y to the 5th is y to the 6th. Okay. Now, can we combine any of these terms? The first term has x and y. The second term has x and y. The third term has x and y. Cool. Now we just have to see if they have the same exact exponents. This x is to the 7th. This x is not. This x is not. I know now immediately I cannot add or subtract these terms. This is my final answer. It is simplified. All right? So we have just finished the front page, and we now have had a little bit of practice on taking a monomial, one term, and just distributing it through a set of parentheses and multiplying it by every single term there, right? So we have finished half of the notes, and you know what that means. Yeah, we're halfway there. This is not going to be long at all. This is going to be good short notes for us. Looking forward to this last page. This last page is more of the same. It's just now, instead of multiplying one term, a monomial, by the parentheses, we're going to multiply two terms, a binomial, times the parentheses. Well, folks, that's just doing what we did twice. That's all it is. If you look at a question like this first one right here, okay? Well, I'll get to this in a second, okay? I know that most of you have probably heard somebody that has gone through Algebra 2 talk about FOIL, or even if they haven't gone through, they said FOIL. Kind of like people know a squared plus b squared equals c squared. People have heard of FOIL. Well, I FOIL it. What does that mean? I'll show you in just a second. Before we look at that, I want you to walk through this one question with me. Okay? Now, this term has this, this expression has two terms. Okay, c and a positive 3, c and a plus 3. There's two terms, as opposed to what we did in the previous pages where there was one term outside. That just means that we have to do what we just did, but we're going to do it for the c, and then we're going to do it for the plus 3. So with that in mind, let's do that right here. The c and the plus 3, if I can get, there we go. All the technical difficulties shall be gone. All right, I'm going to erase that. Go red. All right, so for the c, I'm going to multiply the c by this c. Well, c times c is c squared. Okay, remember, c to the first times c to the first, c to the 1 plus 1 is c to the second. Okay? Don't forget that. Add your exponents. C times C is not C, okay? Because 1 plus 1 is not 1. All right, now bear with me here. We got to multiply this first C. We multiplied it by the first term. We're going to multiply it by the second term. C times plus 2 is plus 2C. Nothing to be afraid of, I hope. Okay, that C has been distributed, that first C. He is done. Now we got to work on this 3. Let's make it come right out of the 3. There we go. Now that 3 must be distributed. So plus 3 times C is plus 3C. And then finally, we got to take that 3 and we have to multiply it by the plus 2. So plus 3 times plus 2 is 3 times 2, 6. Okay, all right. Now, I'm not finished with this question, but what you just did with me right there, that's called foiling. Foiling, F-O-I-L. I don't get hung up on the whole FOIL thing, because FOIL is only possible if you have 2 terms times 2 terms. If you multiply a binomial times another binomial. That's the only time that you can use the FOIL. But if you think of this as, I'm going to distribute my C, and then I'm going to distribute my plus 3. Okay, you can't go wrong with that, right? But for those of you that are interested in FOIL, okay, this is what it said, and look at the picture up on the top here. When we multiplied C by C, this guy right here, okay, C times C, those were the first terms in each set of parentheses. So that is the F in FOIL, okay? So the C squared was our F. And then we took the C and we multiplied it by 2. Well, that meant we took the first term and the last term, and they're like on the outside. Okay, so they call them, in FOIL, they call them the outer terms. Okay, so we use blue to get C times plus 2. So the outer terms gave me 2C. And then we multiplied the 3 times the C. Okay, 3 and the C are on the inside. So those are called inners if we multiply the insides. Okay, so the inners, okay, are the inside terms. That's where we got the 3 times C, the 3C. And then we multiplied the 3, the plus 3 times the plus 2. Okay, we multiplied the last term in the first parentheses times the last term in the second parentheses. So the last terms, okay, the lasts went right there. Okay, so you say, why do they even do the whole FOIL thing? Well, I think it's just so that they can keep things organized, so that they don't forget to do all 4 of those things. You have to distribute the C. That's the F and the O. You have to distribute the 3. That's the I and the L. Okay, so we just did FOIL without calling it FOIL. All right, now back to this question that we had. We just need to make sure that we simplify this before we give it to the ELHS program or to me on a quiz or a test. Well, are there any like terms? Well, this first term has C squared. There are no other terms with C squared. This term is a 6. There are no variables. There are no other terms that don't have a variable. This term has a C to the first as its only variable. This term has a C to the first as its only variable. So we can take those two terms and combine them. So we're going to bring down c squared, and we'll bring down plus 6, and then we're going to combine plus 2c plus 3c, and we get plus 5c. Okay? I highly recommend that you rewind and rewatch and pause at the points where you think it might be a bit confusing. Maybe it would have been better if we didn't even talk about the FOIL, but FOIL is pretty popular, and I don't want you to not be aware of what it is. It's kind of basic math lingo when you get to higher level math. So let's do the second one, the second question, and let's use the FOIL. Okay, so how do we distribute the u? Well, we're going to multiply it by the other u. So that's the first term times the first term. So the f term in FOIL is going to be u times u, which is u squared. That u also must be multiplied by the plus 6. Okay, so if I multiply the u by the plus 6, that would be plus 6u. Notice that u and the plus 6 are the outer terms in FOIL. So we've done the f, we've done the o. Now we got to do the I. We're going to take that -4, and we're going to multiply it by the other inner term, the u. So in FOIL, the two inner terms is -4 and u, so minus 4u. And then finally, we multiply that -4 times the plus 6. So the two last terms, the -4 is last in the first parentheses, the plus 6 is last in the second parentheses. Multiply them together for the last of your terms. -4 times plus 6, minus times plus is minus. 4 times 6 is 24. Do we have any like terms? Yes, we do. We have a plus 6u and a minus 4u. So let's bring down your u squared. Let's bring down your minus 24. And then combine these two like terms. Plus 6u minus 4u gives you plus 2u. And that will be our answer. Okay? So if the whole FOIL thing is confusing for you, forget it. Just remember, you take your first term in your first set of parentheses and you distribute it. Then you take your second term and you distribute it. And then you see if you have any like terms and you combine them by adding and subtracting. Okay? If you like FOIL and you think it keeps you on track and that you don't lose pace of making sure that you do all 4 multiplications, like, oh, I did the F, the O, and the L, but I forgot the I. Okay? If you think that FOIL will help you, use it. Okay, so now we come to the last set of questions here. I do believe that's it, right? Nice. Okay, it's just more FOIL because you have 2 terms times 2 terms. Okay, so that's a binomial against multiplied by another binomial. It's just that now they're going to throw in a 7y. The coefficient of y is not always 1. The coefficient of a is not always 1. They throw a 5a in there. Okay? Same questions, same topic, just a little more to think about. But it's more that you've already done in Algebra 1. So with that in mind, let's go right ahead. I'll do the left question with FOIL, and I'll do the one on the right without talking about FOIL. But if you want to do it with the FOIL, you can do that. So if I think of FOIL, so let's go, I'll put F is going to be orange. Let's go, O will be green, I will be blue, and L will be red. Okay, so first term times first term. 1y times 7y. Okay, well, 1y times 7y is 7y to the second, because y to the first times y to the first is y to the second. For the green, the outer, Okay, the two outside terms, the first on the left and the last on the right. Y times minus 1 is minus 1y. You can put the 1 there for now. Don't have a problem with that. If you want to just put minus y, that's okay too. For the inner terms, these two inside guys, the plus 4 and the 7y. Plus 4 times 7y, well, plus 4 times 7 is plus 28. Only one of the terms has a y, so we're just going to bring the y along. And then last but not least, in the red, we're going to do the last term. So the last term in the left parentheses is the plus 4, and the last term in the second parentheses is the minus 1. So plus 4 times minus 1 is minus 4. Okay, we've now done FOIL. We even put some color in with it. Hope you like that, by the way. So now we look at those middle terms, and I see again, I have like terms. So let's bring the 7y squared down. Let's bring the minus 4 down. But this term and this term both have y to the first. And because they both have y to the first as their only variables, they can be added or subtracted. They can be combined. So minus 1y plus 28y gives you a positive or plus 27y. There is your final answer. Okay, so we did that question. We did it with the F, the O, the I, and the L. For those of you that like that, hope you enjoyed it. If you didn't like that, then I hope you enjoy this next one, because we're not going to use the FOIL, at least not by name, even though we will go first, then outer, then inner, then last. Okay, so let's do this last question together. All right, I'm going to take the 5a and I'm going to distribute it. I'm going to distribute it to the a first. So 5a times a is 5a squared, because a to the first times a to the first is a to the second, and 5 times 1 is 5. I'm going to take my 5a and I'm going to distribute it to the minus 6. So now my 5a has been distributed to everything. Okay, so my 5a, after I multiply it by the minus 6, I don't have to use that 5a anymore. It's done. So 5a times minus 6, so 5 times minus, positive times minus is minus. 5 times 6 is 30, so 5a times 6 is 30a. Okay, so again, the 5a is done. We have distributed the 5a through. We're not going to give the 5a any more playtime. We're going to take the minus 1, and now we're going to distribute the minus 1. So we're going to go minus 1 times a, which is minus 1a, toughie. And then we're going to take that minus 1 and distribute it to the minus 6. Minus 1 times minus 6 is plus 6. Minus times minus is plus. 1 times 6, 6. Cool beans. Okay. We just did FOI and L. We just didn't call it FOIL. So now we're just going to look and say, do we have any like terms? Yes, we do. So let's bring down our 5a squared, because there are no like terms with 5a squared. Let's bring down our plus 6, because there are no like terms to positive 6. And we take the minus 30a and the minus 1a, and we combine them. Minus 30 minus 1 is minus 31. And since this is 30a and 1a, then we're going to get minus 31a. We're done. Right. So I'm curious as to how many of you prefer to use the FOIL acronym of FOIL, and how many of you prefer to just say, I'm going to take the first term and distribute it all the way through the second term, and then I'm going to take the second term and distribute that all the way through the second group of parentheses. Okay? How many of you use FOIL, and how many of you just say, I'm going to use distributing, and that's it. First the 5a and then the minus 1, for example. Okay? But other than that, we're done. Okay? Have a lovely day. If you have questions, come into one of our Zoom meetings, shoot me an email, come into Math Lab, Hope you're all well. Hope you're all safe. And, take care. See you later.